Okay, so I found this confession, and it hit me because it's so real asterisk. Like, it's the kind of truth people usually keep to themselves. Someone went to Reddit and said, quote, "I've got 4 balls. And I need you to hear this exactly how it was told, because it's vulnerable and honest and kind of beautiful in its own weird way." So this person, let's call them Alex, starts by saying, yeah, it's what it sounds like. Not a troll. They genuinely have 4 testes, 2 normal-sized ones and then 2 little ones on either side, about 1/6 the size of the regular ones. And they found this out when they were pretty young, but only realized it was weird asterisk as a teenager. Think about that for a second. They went through childhood just having this part of their body, not knowing it was unusual, not knowing they were carrying around something that made them different. You can't immediately notice anything visually different, so no doctor has ever commented on it. They don't know if it has any real effects. It's just been this quiet secret living in their body this whole time. And then they admit something that took guts to say out loud. They're a bi guy, so they've looked at stuff, and they've noticed that their ballsack is much bigger than the average person's, and listen to how they say it. Okay, I know that sounds weird, but that's why it's a throwaway account confession. And honestly, I felt that. The need to justify yourself even when you're being completely honest, even when you're just stating facts about your own body. They say this is embarrassing as hell, and they've told literally nobody. Who would want to hear that they have 2 extra mini balls? Nobody, that's who. But the thing is, they needed to say it. They needed someone to know. That's what honesty looks like, carrying something alone until you can't anymore. So yeah, they've got extra balls. It doesn't really affect them. They don't know how rare it is, and nobody in their life knows. Just Reddit. Just strangers who might understand what it means to have a truth you can't share with anyone close to you. Then they add an edit with some extra information, and you can feel them processing this in real time. They've had their balls checked out by doctors before, but never for this specific reason. Since the extra 2 are much smaller, they doubt it was noticed because the doctors weren't specifically looking for an abnormal shape or mass. They were just checking for the usual stuff. Nobody was hunting for bonus balls. They severely doubt this is cancer because the extra 2 are the same size, completely parallel on each side like the regular ones, feel almost the same besides general size. But still, for more info, they might look into getting specifically this checked out. And you can hear the hesitation there, right? The might, the uncertainty about whether this thing they've lived with their whole life is even worth investigating. Someone probably asked if they absorbed a twin in the womb because of course the internet went there. And Alex says, as far as they're aware, they didn't. But they add, it would have been pretty cool if I had NGL. Not gonna lie, even in the middle of this vulnerable confession, they're keeping it light. They're making it easier for everyone else to handle. Also probably not cysts. They've had these all their life. At least, as long as they can remember. Based on what they can tell, these extra balls have every similarity to the normal ones besides size, and they would expect them to have other noticeable differences if they really weren't balls. Still, just to be safe, they're probably gonna book a doctor's appointment sometime, though it may be difficult. Because they are both broke and without health insurance, and that part hits. They've been living with this their entire life. They finally work up the courage to tell anyone. They're considering getting it checked out. And then reality crashes in. Money, insurance, the actual logistics of getting medical care in a system that doesn't make it easy. But here's what gets me about this whole thing. The way they end it. Thanks for taking an interest in my balls, Elmau. After everything they just shared, after being that honest, that vulnerable, that real, they thank people for listening, for caring, for taking an interest in something they've carried alone for so long. And they laugh it off because that's easier than sitting in the weight of what they just did. This is someone who's been carrying a physical difference their entire life, something that doctors didn't catch, something they couldn't talk about with friends or partners, something that made them feel isolated in this really specific, really lonely way. And they finally said it out loud. They finally let someone else hold it with them. And you know what? I'm glad they did, because this is the kind of truth that matters. Not because having 4 balls is some huge deal, it might not be, medically speaking, but because keeping secrets about your own body, feeling like you can't share something this fundamental about yourself, that isolation is real. That weight is real. The most vulnerable part of this whole confession isn't even about the extra balls. It's about the shame, the embarrassment, the feeling that this thing about your body is too weird, too strange, too much for anyone else to handle. It's the idfk how this happened. It's the nobody in my life knows. It's the carrying it alone because you don't think anyone would want to hear it. And the real truth is, people do want to hear it. People do care. Over 1,200 people upvoted this confession. 300 people commented. Not to mock, not to make fun, but to engage. To say, hey, that's interesting, or you should get that checked out, or I'm glad you shared this. Because at the end of the day, we all have something we're carrying alone. Something about our bodies or our minds or our lives that we think is too weird, too much, too embarrassing to share. And when someone has the courage to say their truth out loud, it gives the rest of us permission to acknowledge ours. Alex doesn't know if their 4 balls affect them. They don't know how rare it is. They're not sure if they should see a doctor, and they're stressed about the cost if they do. But they know one thing now that they didn't know before. They're not alone in knowing anymore. Hundreds of strangers on Reddit now know this thing about them. And instead of judgment, they got curiosity. Instead of mockery, they got concern. Instead of rejection, they got acceptance. And maybe that's enough to make the next conversation, with a doctor, with a partner, with a friend, a little bit easier. This is what honesty looks like. Messy and real and necessary. It's saying the thing you're scared to say and finding out the world doesn't end. It's admitting something weird about yourself and discovering people are kinder than you thought. It's being vulnerable enough to say, I have 4 balls and I've never told anyone, and hearing back, thank you for trusting us with that. And that's the truth they needed to say out loud. Thank you for listening to it. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever kept a secret about your body because you thought it was too weird to share, drop a comment. Let's normalize being honest about the things that make us different. And if you want more real confessions, more vulnerable truths, hit subscribe. Because this is what we do here. We listen. We don't judge. We just hold space for the truth. Thanks for being here. Title suggestions primary. I have 4 balls and I've never told anyone until now, alt 1. Living with a secret about my body that no one knows, alt 2. The truth I've been carrying about my body my entire life, alt 3. 4 balls, 0 people who know, until today.